Hello and welcome to another episode of Exploring Standard. As always, I am your host, Jess, and today I am joined by Gary Beales. And Gary is an expert in management systems and certification implementation for the automotive sector. He has extensive experience with IA. This is a mouthful. I'm going to say this before we get into this podcast. This standard is the only one that is a right tongue twister for me, but I'm going to do it anyway. IATF 16949. Gary, how are you today?
Good afternoon, Jessica. Yep, very well, thanks. Thank you, and very well pronounced. Spot on.
For now. We'll see how we get on.
Yeah.
So in our episode today, we're going to explore what IATF 16949 is and how it differs from ISO 9001 and the practical steps for organizations looking to implement or upgrade their certification systems. Before we get into all that though, I always like to give my guests an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell us a bit about themselves. So Gary, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks, Jessica. Yep, so my name's Gary Beales. I'm an account manager for a company called UTAC. I'm based at the Millbrook Proving Ground in Bedfordshire in the UK. My history is, well, certainly within management systems, goes back to 2012, I believe. So hopefully it's given me a little bit of sort of background and knowledge of what management systems are, how we can help customers out, why customers would want a management systems certification framework within their business, and how we can support clients going forward. So certification is me, and if I can be of any assistance, then happy to help.
Fantastic. Oh, that certification is me and I am certification.
That's it.
That's it. That's the end of the Okay. So for listeners who are new to IATF 16949, what is it and what advantages does it have to bring to the automotive organizations?
Yeah, good question. So we'll start right at the sort of top level. So IATF 16949 is the definitive international standard for quality management systems, or QMS if we abbreviate it, and it's specifically tailored for the automotive industry. So it builds upon the foundations and the requirements of the better known ISO 9001, but it incorporates additional automotive specific mandates focused on safety, security, and supply chain efficiency. So lots and lots of people have heard of quality and ISO 9001. So that's great. But those within the automotive sector or that are looking to get into the automotive sector, then the buzzword is IATF 16949. So we'll talk about the sort of differences in a little bit, but the advantages, so you could say, well, I've got 9001, then why would I want to upgrade or even look at the IATF 16949? So it's very much based around automotive. So aerospace have got their own set of standards. Rail and medical have got their own. So automotive, we've got ours as well. And it's the 16949, which is great. So advantages are, I'm going to split them down and I'll come to them a little bit in more detail shortly, but commercial advantages and operational advantages, because everybody's got to know, depending on what their role are. So key advantages, global market access. So this is, I guess, a commercial one. So most of the big names, we'll call them the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, the big names, your Fords, Nissans, McLarens, Toyotas, they are fed by suppliers or a supply chain. And anybody watching this podcast could be one of those suppliers, a tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. But a lot of the OEMs, they need to make sure that the goods or the products that are feeding into their system are of a good, high quality standard. So they're looking for certain credentials and a certain remit from their suppliers. And if a supplier holds IATF 16949 certification, not just ISO, then they stand a good chance, or even it's a prerequisite from the OEMs that they must hold the 16949. So that's an obvious one. That's a commercial advantage straight off the bat. But there's not only commercial, there's sort of processes as well. So it also internally enhances operational efficiency, how a business that holds 16949 goes about running itself and its business. It incorporates risk-based thinking, processes to do with product quality, product safety, supplier consistency, continual improvement, And credibility and trust. This is an important one, because if a company, a tiered supplier, holds IATF 16949 certification, then it's a real badge of honor. It's a real sort of head above the parapet job that lets other large organizations, such as the OEMs, know that supplier has got good process and basically produces a good product or service that's key for the automotive sector.
Amazing. Thank you. I like that you split in the benefits. I think that really makes it clear that there's benefits through every part of the company. So I guess a big question then, from a business perspective, does implementing 16949 deliver real return on investment? And where do companies typically see that value?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm bound to say that yes, it does.
Yeah.
But because we could
We're
deliver the
not biased, I
16949.
promise.
No, it's not a sales pitch. But then over time, and I'll stress that over time, then yes, it will. And there's lots of organizations out there that hold 16949, and they don't do it just to show off their badges on the website. They do it for a real reason. And that real reason is the commercial aspect, but also the operational one as well. So if it was just a badge of honor, then people wouldn't just purchase this thing just for the sake of it. So over time, there is a return on investment, but it's not a quick win. Don't expect that you can implement 16949 then automatically see the budgets and the revenue increase. You know, this is a process over time that will eventually make the business better run and better off financially. I guess the main return on investment, the key one is the qualification, the thing we talked about before, where if you're feeding into the OEMs, the big brands, then the fact that you're part of their supply chain can open, or be possibly part of that supply chain, it opens doors.
Yeah.
If you're saying, right, we've got this widget, we've got this product, we've got this service, we want to go and knock on the doors of Rolls-Royce, JLR, Nissan, McLaren, then, that's great, but they're going to want to expect certain sort of an area of quality. So 16949, that's where the value can sort of come. It's good for retaining your existing customers. If you've got any that already mandate IATF certification, of course, you're going to need to maintain that to maintain the relationship with them. I think a big one as well, and this is why a lot of organizations initially look at the IATF and the upgrade from the 9001, is because if they're looking to win business through the tendering process, RFQs, PQQs, almost without a doubt, they're going to come across the question of, are you either ISO 9001? But if it's very specific, it will ask for IATF. And if you can't tick that box, then you don't stand as good a chance of winning that tender or PQQ if you could tick the box. We take a lot of inquiries to say, Gary, look, we're going for a big win here. There's a big tender on the table. It's asking about IATF. What is it? How do we get it? Because the commercial implications are massive if we do get it. We get a lot of sort of questions like that. And then to sort of boil back to, well, where's the return on investment? Well, that's it. You've invested heavily into the implementation of the 16949. That could be one contract. That could be one tender that you win. That if you didn't have it, then you may not have won that. So automatically it's sort of paid for itself. It's a bit of a sort of rudimentary way of looking at it. But if the strategists within an organization are looking at the investment and why you should do it, or why they should do it, then that's as good a sort of answer as any, I think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That competitive advantage that gives you in the industry to be able to say, look at this, look what we've got. The top guys are looking for it, and we've got it. I mean, what else do you say? Yeah,
absolutely. If it's going to help you win more business, then really it is a no-brainer. Plus, of course, it offsets you from your competitors because you not have it. I think the other aspect as well is, and this is the same with any management system, there's an internal aspect here as well, wherein by a good sort of established framework that operates within an organization will make the organization itself more streamlined, more prone to, less prone to wastage, I should say. It's running leaner. There's more buy-in. There's a culture there from the stakeholders that you're running more of a sort of, I won't use the word sort of grown up, but it's more of a established, streamlined process. So internally, because you're following the clauses of the 169, then the organization runs leaner and smoother itself, better training, less waste, more visibility of the supply chain. So there's two aspects of it. The return on investment can be from an internal streamlining as well as winning more business outside of the business.
Yeah,
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. Because if your business is more streamlined, is being more effective, you're saving money and time, and that's the same sort of thing.
That's right. The IATF asks for less waste. Sort of look at your processes, look at your waste patterns, look at where you can streamline. And again, with any management system, it's all about continual improvement. We don't expect this thing to happen overnight, but over time, the business can evolve, and an evolved, more streamlined business hopefully saves money.
Yeah, always. I mean, that's always what you want to do. So you have talked about this briefly, ISO 9001. What are the key differences between 16949 and 9001?
Yeah, and I think this is a really important question because not everybody that holds ISO 9001 automatically qualifies for IATF. So the rules for IATF are quite set out and well defined. So the IATF, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, is specifically for the automotive sector, and more specifically for manufacturers or manufacturers of parts that feed into the automotive supply chain or the automotive sector. It doesn't mean we're not interested in how big or little the organization is, but generally the magic word is manufacturers. So if you're just a warehouse or stockist of items that you import, because there's no manufacturing element to what the company does, then you're not really sort of qualified for IATF. So the first thing you have to set out is, do you even qualify as an ISO 9001 holder? That you do, that the IATF is actually on your radar. So that's something that's sort of quite important. The ISO 9001 is a quality management system, so is the IATF, but the IATF in layman's terms is ISO 9001 but on steroids. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more, the clauses that are set out are over and above the ISO 9001. The ISO 9001 forms the backbone of the IATF. So if you do hold ISO 9001 and you're looking at the IATF, if you've got a robust 9001 system, then the good news is then you are by default on the correct path or the correct journey to obtaining IATF. But there are sort of significant differences that are very specific geared towards automotive. And there's core tools, we call them core tools, advanced product quality planning, APQPs, FMEAs, client-specific requirements. So the 9001 is there, but there's a lot more, if you will, bolt-ons for the IATF that requires. So, like I say, if you hold ISO 9001 and you look into IATF, that's good news. But you will have to sort of have a look at the standard and understand what the sort of differences are, because there are sort of quite a few on the proviso that you do actually qualify for IATF in the first place.
Okay, lovely. Because actually that leads me really nice into my next question. So to say, for instance, a company holds 9001, they know, okay, we qualify to go for IATF, upgrading to IATF. What does that process look like for this company?
Okay. First of all, the IATF isn't a standalone. It's a supplement to the 9001. The 9001 QMS sort of serves as a foundation. So you're quite right, Jessica. The first step is the verification, where you need to verify that you do actually qualify for IATF 16949 eligibility. You will need to purchase a copy of the standard, the IATF. Because of the complexities of the standard compared to the 9001, some organizations will use the services of a third party, maybe a consultant, for example. So you will need to do some sort of planning or gap analysis or pre-preparation in advance to ensure that you know what you're looking at, what needs to be done, what the implementation process looks like over and above the ISO 9001. There's a lot of good training out there. We can provide training ourselves. A lot of other training providers based around the IATF, stuff on social media. There's a huge platform, and my advice would be to look at all of these sort of platforms just so you can understand a little bit more about it, what the requirements are, what the implementation looks like. There's the process of updating the documentation, personnel training. Everybody's got to be on board with this. You will need to carry out internal audits as well, of course. So that, like anything, that there will be a timeline, there will be a flow of the upgrade from the 9001. It's getting the right procedures and processes in place and the right training, so everybody's aware what they've got to do, what the expectations are, which ultimately leads to full certification, of course.
Okay, fabulous. Is it possible or useful then for an organization to run 9001 and 16949 in parallel? Is there like a benefit to holding both certificates, or is it one
Yep.
way or the other?
No, it really boils down to the business itself
Hmm.
and the businesses, their clients and their markets. Because yes, to answer the question straight away, yes, it's possible and often useful to run the 9001 and the 169 in parallel, but it is up to the client. If there isn't a requirement to run them in parallel, then the decision needs to be made fairly early on, because what we don't want is an increased time and costs of separate sort of audits and separate sort of management systems, when you could just either have one or the other, or you
Okay.
do intend to run them sort of side by side. The main sort of factor is that when an organization looks at its client base, is it purely automotive, or does the client is some of their clients, are they automotive themselves, or does the client have markets within food, agriculture, engineering, whatever, where the IATF isn't recognized?
Okay.
Because some of their clients, they may not recognize the IATF. They say, no, we want ISO 9001. The automotive clients of theirs know what IATF is, but the food, agri, and the general sort of clients, if you will, they won't know what IATF is. So the decision is up to the organization. Non-automotive clients, they'll expect to see 9001. So,
Yeah.
so they'll, that's a factor to keep the 9001. And sometimes if an organization is filling out, looking to win a tender, and it's specifically asking for ISO 9001, if you're ticking the IATF box, then that may not sort of help the tender win process. So if you've got IATF as well as 9001, and you fill out a lot of tenders that are always asking for 9001, then that may be a reason in itself that you do want to keep
Yeah.
the two certificates running in parallel. It really does boil down to the customer and the customer's clients. If all of your business is within automotive, then my advice would be just to run with the IATF 16949 and save a little bit of money and make things a little bit more streamlined.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. I mean, obviously, from a business perspective, if you go for tenders and you need to have both, then yeah, but obviously, if you are just the automotive sector, then just have the one and streamline everything.
It really is, and just look at the clients that you hold, and if 6% of your business is within the automotive sector, you're going to need both, because
Yeah.
94% of your business could be in any other sector. So you're going to need both. But if you're heavily within the automotive and you're not sort of putting your foot into the world of any other of the general sectors, then yes, stick with the IATF.
Okay, fantastic. So we've been talking a lot about standards of 9001, but can IATF, can it be integrated with other management system standards? Obviously, other than 9001, I know obviously it can with that, but
Yep.
other standards, and which ones make the most sense if it can?
Yeah. Okay. So there's something out there in the management system world called Annex SL,
Hmm.
Sierra Lima Annex SL. So that was designed so the integration of multiple standards, well, makes life easier, basically. And the IATF is no different. So yes, the IATF can be integrated with other standards. You've correctly mentioned the most common one, which is the quality one, the ISO 9001. The other core standards, which include the environmental, the ISO 14001, health and
Hmm.
safety, the 45001, information security 27001, they're the most common core standards that businesses hold. And the good news is that, yes, a company can hold one fully integrated management system, or to use a term, an integrated manual. So
Okay.
instead of having one set of processes, one manual for quality, one for environmental, one for health and safety, one for automotive, you can combine the lot and have them in
Yep.
one manual. So that's good news.
That is good news. Yeah.
So because a lot of organisations are they're very lucky and they hold one, two, or possibly three standards. The
Mhm.
9, the 14, and the 45 are very common to have as three. I think the benefit of an integrated system is reduced savings, reduced audit time, and a consistent approach. I think the only sort of caveat, the only important thing to mention is when it comes down to certification body audits, not internal audits, that's something separate. There can be a combined approach. But when it comes to your certification body coming in to conduct your audits that will maintain your certification, then you will not have an auditor that can conduct an IATF audit, an environmental audit, and a information security audit all at the same time. It simply can't work like that. You will still
Mhm.
need separate audits rather than having a sort of a complete combined approach where you have an auditor who walks through the door that wears three hats with three different standards. It won't work like that. So the IATF will still need to be kept separately, even though you've got a combined manual and you've done your internal audits as a combined integrated approach. But when you actually have the certification body coming in, it will just be for IATF 16949 in one phase, and then your environmental or health and safety in a separate phase.
I think that's a really good point, because obviously, if you talk about integrating your systems and them all together, people automatically assume, oh, we're just going to do the one
Yeah,
certification audit, and you're like,
yeah, yeah,
actually,
yeah,
um,
yeah. I mean, it'd be nice, but I think the complexity of the standards and a lot of the auditors out there for automotive, they are very specialist. There's
mhm,
nowhere
yeah,
near as many in for 16949 as there are sort of 9001 or 14,001. So it's a very specialist standard. The auditors are very specialist. There are some multi-hatted auditors out there that have got the qualification for the automotive and the environmental and the health and safety, and that's great. He or she won't conduct an audit in one phase that will spread across 2, 3, 4 different standards. It doesn't work like that.
okay, that's really good to know. Thank you so much for that. So UTAC is COFRAC accredited rather than UCAS.
Yes.
So what are the key differences between these accreditation bodies?
Yes, that's right. So UTAC has its HQ in Paris. The
Hmm.
lucky things, even though we've sort of got operational offices in the UK.
Yeah,
So in the world of accreditation, the managing office, so to speak, that will then dictate to which accreditation service that we report into. The most common one in the UK, of course, is UCAS,
yeah,
United Kingdom Accreditation Service. With everybody's heard of those, and that's the box that you'll see appear in the tenders.
yeah.
Um, we can come to that a little more in a moment. But specifically, each country has their own accreditation service. The UK is UCAS, the French service is COFRAC, the Germans is DAX, and anybody within the world of management systems generally knows these. The good news is there's a recognition of agreements across basically globally. So us as certification bodies, yes, we are COFRAC accredited compared to maybe a counterpart in the UK who's UCAS, but basically we're all following the same rules. We all
Okay,
fall under the same sort of international umbrella. So the processes that we follow as a certification body that fall under the COFRAC umbrella are exactly the same as the processes that an organisation in the UK under the UCAS umbrella follow. So
okay,
it
okay.
it's one advantage of when a company looks to gain certification that they go with an accredited certification body, because we're all following a very strict set of guidelines that we're all basically playing by the same rules. It doesn't matter if the managing office is in France or London or wherever, we're all playing the same game. So
I mean,
that's
it
good
makes
news.
sense, because obviously these standards are internationally recognized. So obviously, for the certification bodies and their bodies to not be talking together and working together, I mean, that wouldn't make any sense. So that is fantastic to
E-
know. Um,
Exactly. Exactly.
So if a certificate is issued under COFRAC accreditation, will it still be valid and recognised in the UK automotive market? I feel
Yeah.
like I know the answer already, but let's just dive into
Yeah,
that.
you have, and the good chances are clients looking to gain IATF, so they're looking at the bigger picture, which is really good. They're looking at the wider market. You rightly suggested that wider market falls outside of the boundaries of the UK and Ireland, so therefore the global targets will be looking at their certifications and accreditations. So the international recognition will be there. It's perfectly valid. It's perfectly recognised. The magic word is you are accredited. You hold that accredited sort of badge, whether it be UCAS, COFRAC, it will be appearing on your certificates. Your targets and your suppliers, they'll know where to look for that badge, and they'll see, when you ask the question, are you accredited? Yes, we're with UCAS. Yeah, we're with COFRAC. Yes, we're with DAX. That's good news. If any UK-based companies are filling out any tenders in the UK, then a lot of the time procurement teams that put these tenders together and putting the questions together for companies to complete, are you IATF or 9001 UCAS accredited? Even if you hold IATF with a COFRAC or DAX badge or ANAB, you can still tick that box, because 9 times out of 10, a procurement team won't know the difference between UCAS and COFRAC and DAX. But where
Hmm.
it says, are you UCAS, even though that you've got a certificate that says COFRAC or DAX, you can tick that box because you're fully accredited. It's all the same thing. So that's good news. It doesn't discriminate, basically. So if you're
Yeah.
looking to win tenders in the UK or that overseas business, then the accreditation mark is key, as opposed to who actually sort of stamps the certificate, if you will.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that
yeah,
makes, yeah,
it's good news. It's
fantastic.
good news.
Yeah, it's really good news. And obviously it's good that you've highlighted that, because obviously some people might get a bit confused, like, oh, but we're not UCAS accredited, but COFRAC, but actually don't stress. It's accredited.
Yeah,
That's the main thing,
yeah,
and good to go. Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, UTAC provides certification for a lot of the major OEMs in the UK, household names,
Hmm.
and their certificates say COFRAC. It makes no odds at all. It makes no difference from the level of service. The processes we follow as a certification body to be able to deliver a correct and robust audit. So it doesn't matter if it's an OEM or one of the smaller supply chains. It's fine. We're all covered under the accreditation rules, which are globally set.
Brilliant. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully that's helped out anybody that's perhaps looking at IATF or is thinking about implementing it into their into the company itself.
No, I think it's been fantastic, and obviously the clarification in terms of the different standards and how the management system works, and obviously the COFRAC as well, I think, and the accreditation has really been helpful. What I will do for our listeners, if you want to reach out to Gary, have a bit more of a chat, I'll pop Gary's contact details in the show notes so you can reach out to Gary. And thank you to everyone for listening to today's episode. If you have enjoyed it, please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the podcast, and I'll be back with an episode in a couple of weeks.